guy who has given the basics of this endoscopy, and that holds true for any enucleation. And as Dr. Malik said, that now the stage is already set for enucleation. So the times have passed when we used to talk of resection. Now we talk about endoscopic enucleation of the prostate. And this has come in the EAU guidelines that we must go for endoscopic enucleations rather than anything else. Now, why at all enucleation? Because it is efficacious, it is durable, safe, cost we will discuss. Learning curve, of course, is also an issue, but ultimate thing which just now Chandra Mohan said, that the surgeon's comfort and the patient satisfaction. So everything has to be kept in mind, and the most well-studied technique over last 2 decades has been holmium laser enucleation of the prostate, started way back in 1996 by Peter Gilling. I had the opportunity to see him doing it, and why I started my love for holmium was that I saw him that he's enjoying the operation. So friends, I must say that it is not just a question of achieving an outcome. Also, simultaneously, you have to think of ergonomics, you have to think of the team, and you have to think the beauty of a procedure. So, and it translates into length of stay, catheter times, and the most important thing is the amount of tissue removed. Procedure time, transfusion rates practically negligible, prostate size, no limitation, change in Qmax and IPSS are rewarding, and the most important thing which I have always said is sustained reduction in PSA. So if you do PSA levels after a month or 3 months or 6 months, you will find that they are in 0.000 levels. So this is something which is actually translated into a complete enucleation procedure, where it proves that you have really done a good job. And various modalities in these 20 years, last 2 decades, have been compared, and this is a very busy slide. However, the important thing is that HOLEP is at least equally efficient to all endoscopic enucleation procedures. And to my mind, it is more efficient because I am doing this HOLEP for all failed procedures also. So today I have got such a sort of thing that I am getting patients who have had different other procedures, and then they fail, and then I come to me, and then we had to do the HOLEPs. So what is more important is that a lot of randomized control trials have been studied, and this is just an old slide. I could not get time to get a latest literature, but the most important thing is it is a time efficient procedure, because earlier it was said that it takes long time because all people were learning. But once you have mastered the art, today I have my personal best is 5.6 grams a minute. So we go from 2 to 3 gram a minute. So therefore, if you have mastered the art with a high power laser, you are able to speed up the process. So therefore, first thing is, when you are learning, you must be slow so that you don't create complications. But I will show you that if you have mastered the art, then there is no reason for going worry, and one can go faster once you have preserved all important anatomical landmarks. And this is very important, that when I was learning in the beginning, there was a major issue that it is a pulsed laser and the fiber used to bounce, and majority of the operators in the beginning left this procedure because they could not control the movement of the fiber. But then I had to scratch myself, and with my Pankaj and all people in RG Stone, we had worked hard to create a this device. We call it a bridge laser carrier, where it has got this special carrier which is snugly fits the fiber. So the fiber, if it is at 550 micron, the channel is 600 microns. So it prevents bouncing of the fiber, and therefore, and the other thing which I have done is, which the Stores and Wolf, they have made a locking device. I somehow don't feel the need for a locking device. So I have done away with this locking device, and there is a total freedom of movement, which makes it versatile even in large glands, because there the anatomy has to be nicely thick. And this is something which I practice today, because lot of techniques have been described, whether from anterior-posterior dissection, starting from top down or from below up, have been described. And the reason was that everybody was aiming at minimizing the level of stress incontinence. But when I found that one has to have a technique where you have minimal morbidity. So with this, we have made it simple, and this was presented at World Congress Endourology, that you have to simply make the whole adenoma, take it as an orange, and we call it a tangerine type of technique, where you have to understand that you how to enucleate. To make it simple, you take it as a full clock, and you just develop the floor. So first you develop the floor, second you develop the roof, and the whole adenoma sits at 10 o'clock, 3 o'clock and 12 o'clock, and then you are able to enucleate it bit by bit. So the lesson is that one has to proceed just 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, always keeping in mind the plane of enucleation being defined. So what I tell my juniors whenever they are standing behind me or they are doing and I am supervising them, that one has to see a defined plane, and from a defined area you have to move to an undefined area, and it has to, you never lose the anatomical landmarks. So with this, I'll just show you a small video which amplifies this technique, that how we can do with this procedure. Prakhar, with the video. Can you see the video?
Sir, right now slide is there, sir. Now we can see, sir.
Okay. So now just have a look that this is a large gland, patient on anticoagulants, and the anatomy first has to be seen. So when you localize the 2 ureteric orifices, inspect the bladder for any pathology, and come back to the bladder neck. So the most important thing in enucleation procedure, identification of the ureteric orifices, safeguarding. This is the left orifice. Then we look at the right orifice. You can appreciate that it is very close to the bladder neck. And then we start incision of the at 6 o'clock. It could be, if it is a big median lobe, you can start either at 5 o'clock or at 7 o'clock. And don't worry about the median lobe. The whole median lobe gets retracted towards one side. And the next step is this inverted U-shaped incision just proximal to viru. And this is how you start enucleating. The point I want to highlight is that you always see the capsule, but you don't never work on the capsule. Just now Chandra Mohan told you that it is a very fine knife, precise knife. Absolutely true. But the knife is on the adenoma. You just appreciate that the knife is on the adenoma. The capsule is seen and safeguarded. So that is the crux of the whole thing, that you can always. So this is how we are developing the floor. We are just working below the adenoma. Adenoma is enucleated, and then we switch on to 12 o'clock. Now, can you appreciate the sphincter? So this is the sphincter, and we go 5 millimeter proximal to the sphincter. And then we define the distal limit of our enucleation. This safeguards all kind of incontinence. Now, adenoma is round, so therefore you can appreciate that this is a butterfly-like movement at 12 o'clock. So I am just shifting gears, and from right, left, I am not really bothered about one lobe. This is how this is sphincter, and this is, I have entered 5 millimeter proximal. And if you see, my fiber will rotate from 12 to 1, and then we will keep on developing from 12 to 11. So we create a group from 11 to 1 o'clock. Similarly, as I have created the floor from 5 to 7 o'clock. So once you have developed the floor and developed the roof, your all important things like sphincter, then your ureteric orifices, everything has been safeguarded. The only thing left now to be safeguarded is that you don't have to perforate the capsule. So the best way not to perforate the capsule, as I told you earlier, is that see the capsule and safeguard it. So all the time I am seeing the capsule and making this adenoma. You can see a strip of mucosa at 12 o'clock. As a matter of habit, I leave this strip, small strip around a centimeter at 12 o'clock, which prevents it from any kind of this thing. The mucosa regrows and the whole, if you see later on, the whole fossa is, now this is after developing the roof. So I think you can all appreciate that what we have done is we have developed the floor below, we have developed the roof above, and now at the same time, the whole two lobes, as I showed you in the diagram, are seen at 3 o'clock and at 6 o'clock. And this is a mucosal attachment. Now, once you have developed this, you can appreciate that this mucosal attachment is at 3 o'clock. Having done this mucosal attachment, now the whole adenoma is very, very simply sitting, and you have to do this clockwise and then anti-clockwise movements. Now you see the whole length of adenoma, you can see the capsule, it is falling down. Similarly, when you are working from below upwards, it will be getting lifted upwards. So I don't see any force. This is very thing important, that other enucleations like bipolar enucleation, you have to use force. And here absolutely it is an enjoyable procedure. You can simply, if you are in the right plane, and there is no bleeding, so there is no, anesthetist also enjoys, because there is no hemodynamic disturbance throughout the procedure. And this is what I said, that defined area to undefined area, working from say now at the moment I am working at 2 o'clock, and from 5 to 4, and then I will narrow it down to 3 o'clock. So this is the length of the adenoma, bringing it right up to this thing, to the apical region, and this is the floor which is getting widened. Now once you have developed this, it is a question of widening the floor. So keep on widening the floor, and then this is how you are seeing from below, and then you have to see from above, and therefore the whole thing is like a mushroom. And this mushroom is now practically attached at 3 o'clock with a small sort of pedicle. So this, once you this pedicle, you can see the bladder neck fibers, and at this you have to incise simply the mucosal attachment here, and then whole adenoma goes inside the bladder. So I think there is no reason that people are scared of learning this procedure. It's a very, very simple and enjoyable procedure. There is no need to push, and any size of gland can be removed. And we have been able to, I did the largest gland which I have done is 634 grams by this method. And this is not only me, all over the world, extremely large prostates. We have done more than 150 cc, around 1178, nearly 1200 prostates, and with good results. So this is important, that extremely large prostate can be safely enucleated. And as I was telling you, now publications are pouring in that post URP, post KTP, post other lasers, you have residual tissue. And we have been witnessing that this residual tissue is responsible for recurrent UTIs, recurrent lower urinary tract symptoms. And if you scope them, they need a repeat this thing, either a radical TURP or in infected cases, or they need the enucleation. So I have been doing enucleations for this. And the most important thing which is seen is this underactive detrusor. I have done 48 cases of this, nearly 50 cases of underactive detrusor, proved urodynamically. And once you remove these catheters, they void. So these are the patients who were roaming around whole city of Delhi. All had suggested after urodynamics that you will need CIC lifelong. But then I said that let us counsel the patient. CIC's option is always there, but let us make an whole attempt. We did, and in 44 cases, they voided to beauty. So therefore, the important thing is that if you do a complete removal, the underactive detrusor is not such a major issue. The other article which was published from Korea was holmium laser enucleation for multilobulated prostatic abscesses. Earlier, we used to be really bothered when infection used to be a contraindication for any kind of enucleation. But now, if you understand the pathology, if we are simply staying on to the capsule and not looking at the content of the adenoma, then you can safely enucleate the whole thing. And the actual advantage is that if you, in one patient, I had a younger patient, I had to drain the abscess. However, if it is 60 plus, obviously the obstruction is there. It is always wise. Sometimes one may wonder that these patients may develop sepsis, so we put a SPC in beforehand, and then we can enucleate these patients without any problem. The actual advantage is that no recurrence of infection, no recurrence of this abscesses, and because you have completely enucleated. Now, this holmium is coming up as a salvage procedure. If there is a failure of urolift, you do enucleation completely. Even the staples which are put in lift, they can be cut with this holmium laser. So that is another beauty. And then I had done 2 cases of failed prostate artery embolization, where the prostate got shrunk. However, it was the median lobe which was not getting affected very much, and it was acting as obstruction. One patient came from US who got a prostate artery embolization done, and then he was having symptoms. We did MRI and everything, and we found that prostate is still there. The shrunken residual prostate had to be enucleated, and now it is. So friends, this procedure is absolutely efficacious, and this translates into the durability also. If you see, we have been able to follow our patients for last more than 20 years, and some patients who I operated in 2002 and 2003, when I phone them and find out how are they doing, and then I ask them to do a ultrasound, till date the residual prostate or this PSA is hardly less than 1. So 20 years follow-up, I have a personal record with these patients nearly. However, in the literature, up to 10 years it has been published, and reoperation rate is from 0 to 0.7%. So therefore, I must say that ultimate translation of any procedure is that once you operate, it should be a lifelong procedure, which obviously by any endoscopic enucleation, whether it is by other thulium laser or bipolar, it is going to be there. But then it is a question of safety. Now, why I say safety? That if you have got a patient, he is not bothered whether you do by any modality. What he is bothered, or what anesthetist is bothered, is that how safe it is in a patient who has got 15% of ejection fraction, or a patient who has got a stress DSE positive, stress thallium positive. So these are the patients who are referred to me from all over India today, or Southeast Asia today, that these are the patients of doctors, fathers of doctors, or these kind of high-risk patients, where on anticoagulants, I frequently get international patients from Dubai, from Middle East, all these patients where you cannot stop anticoagulants. Patients I have been doing with mitral valve and other valve replacements, where you cannot stop their anticoagulants. So this is one area, and my practice, this is a nearly 1.5-year-old data. I could not make the latest data, but in these 7,600 cases, practically half of them are on anticoagulants. So this is the kind of patient substrate which I am getting today. So, and they are large prostates, they are on anticoagulants, and one can do the bridge therapy, and we can do with continued ecosprin. And therefore, it is very important that patient safety is given due respect. There is no increased risk in high-risk patients. And today, there was a time when we used to condemn some patients for a catheter life, or put them on SPC lifelong. However, now we have no patient of which is condemned for want of surgery, even if it, whether it is a high cardiac risk, renal failure, post-renal transplantation, post-radiotherapy, post-brachytherapy, because the beauty of this fiber is that it can cut through the clips, it can cut through anything, which is coming in its way. So you have to master. I have done in carcinoma prostates, fibrous prostate. People say we do channel TURP, but somehow in my unit, if I have to operate on this carcinoma prostate, I love to do with high power laser. It cuts beautifully, and you enucleate them, and the patients feel so happy. And the point I always raised is about stress urinary incontinence. It is an art of doing enucleation one has to master. And earlier we used to get incontinence. If you see this slide, earlier we were doing the bladder neck first. So what used to happen was that whole adenoma at the middle of the procedure used to sit at the sphincter, and then you struggle at the sphincter. So now what I do is, and I have been showing these slides all over the world, is that you detach the adenoma in the beginning, as I showed you in my video, and throw it away so that your sphincter is safe, your orifices are safe, and your capsule is safe. So this is the beauty of this procedure. That so if you have mastered the art, any amount of tissue which is distal to viru can be safely enucleated. Just like, as I said, peeling an orange away. So therefore, one doesn't have to worry. All the complications which have been described, they do happen when you are learning the procedure. But once you have mastered the art, all these procedures, the incidence becomes very, very low. And the stricture in bladder neck contracture basically is also an art of doing the procedure. If you, as Dr. Desai highlighted, that how you respect the urethra, your stricture rate will go down. Similarly, how you put the bladder neck incisions at the end of any enucleation, the bladder neck contracture rate will go down. And how nicely you do the enucleation, your reoperation rate will go down. So therefore, I think that the last practically 8,000 cases, more than 8,000 cases we have done, the need for transfusion is negligible. We have never arranged, even in the large glands more than 150 cc or 200 cc, we don't arrange any blood. Our anesthetists used to be earlier very much worried, but when they started seeing me operating, they say, sir, ab aap to kar hi loge, aapko to koi dikkat hi nahi hai, kitna bhi bada prostate ho. So therefore, you have to give confidence to the team of anesthesia. And therefore, as I told you, that the bleeding can happen post-operatively only in patients who are on anti, be able to withdraw it. And therefore, only out of nearly 8,000 cases, we have 5 patients who needed a clot evacuation and fulguration. They were on continued anticoagulants. So friends, I must say that all these important thing is, but always, as Chandra Mohan said, that cost is an issue. Let me tell you, friends, that cost has come down very drastically. The reason is that we reuse our fiber, which is 3 meters long, and we reuse our blade, which is giving us 60 cases, 70 cases. And similarly, fiber we can use 200 cases. So therefore, there was an ad by RG Stone that HOLEP 25,000 all inclusive, stay, drugs, and whatnot. So what I want to highlight is that if you master an art, the cost come down. It is one-time investment, and let me tell you that this laser gives you good for RIRS, for stone disease, for endopylotomy, for ureteric stricture, for urethral stricture, for bladder tumor, for TCC in pelvis, for ureteric tumors. So you name a thing, this laser is so wonderful tool that I don't think that any urologist should be missing this tool in his armamentarium. So friends, I think cost should not be a factor. And today we have lasers which the cost has come down. But then I think all my predecessors had highlighted the learning curve. And let me tell you that 20 cases surgical proficiency can be achieved, but you become an expert after 50 cases. And I am sure that learning curve of TURP is also no less than 80 cases, and this has been published. So every activity worth doing, friends, has a learning curve, and I really appreciate that the youngsters, they come up and take up this procedure, and I am always there to mentor them. Now, the beauty why one should learn this is that it is a surgeon's comfort. So it is not only the surgeon's comfort, the patient's comfort, and most important, team's comfort, the anesthetist's comfort. So ultimately, we have to move to an era where everybody is comfortable in the team, and then last but not the least is the patient satisfaction. If you don't think of patient satisfaction, I think there is no point. So now we have publications which show that the satisfaction with the treatment under question, very satisfied, rather satisfied, and neutral. So this occupies the whole graph. There was hardly any patient who was unsatisfied. So that is where this is an overall response assessment by the publication which I am mentioning, that markedly improved were 81.9% and moderately improved 12.1% and slightly improved 5.4%. And there were only 2 patients in the whole more than 1300 patients which were sent a questionnaire and assessed. There were only 0.6% who had no change. And these 2 patients had one had little bit of incontinence and the second had mild dysuria. So therefore, if you assess the overall response to the patients, this is something which is really high. So let me conclude by saying that this has led to progression of lasers in not only India, all over the world. Earlier, the people who were skeptic about using holmium laser now have started more and more buying lasers, and therefore I say that why HOLEP should be a choice and not an option, because it is efficacious, it is durable, it is safe, it is giving a comfort to surgeon, and patient satisfaction scores are very high. The only 2 points which are always questioned are the cost and learning curve. And if you are an expert, you are going to minimize the cost, as well as once you get a mentored program, you are making this learning curve also come down. So with this, I thank you, friends, and I am sure that I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.